Denji is alone, completely alone. His life is a succession of humiliations. His father died, he was born in debt, he lives in a rotten shack and works as a demon hunter for coins. His body no longer belongs to him. He sold an eye, a kidney, and a testicle. Even his soul belongs to the Yakuza. But the most brutal thing about all of this is his relationship with himself. He doesn't value himself. He sees himself as a tool, as useful garbage. He accepts any deal, any abuse because he believes he's worthless. His only real connection is Pochita, a demon he rescued by making a blood contract, and since then, he's been his only companion and best friend. Denji has grown up with nothing and no one, without support, reinforcement, or education, reduced to a piece of meat driven only by his survival instinct. Denji knows nothing but pain and indifference, and that has plagued his mind his entire life, to the point of concluding, perhaps to survive, or perhaps as a surrender, that he is nothing more than a piece of crap who deserves everything that happens to him. Denji has no big goals. In fact, he has no goals of his own. He just wants to pay off a debt inherited by his father, eat bread with jam, sleep in a bed, and be with a pretty girl. That simplicity is his reality, and sometimes the simplest dreams are the great treasure some wish to possess, and that's how we discover that Denji is completely destroyed. One day, Denji is summoned by the Yakuza boss. He usually uses him to do jobs as a devil hunter, eliminating demons. So, Denji goes to the place where one of them is supposedly located, but there's nothing there. However, betrayed by the group, the Yakuza had signed a contract with the zombie demon, who promised them more power in exchange for getting rid of the devil hunters. And, just as we learn this, Denji is stabbed along with Pochita, and both are brutally dismembered, marking the end of the Denji we know. But with his last bit of strength, Pochita fuses his body with Denji's remains on the condition that he show him the dreams he'd talked about so much. And thanks to this, Denji regains his body, even the parts he had previously sold. And he acquires a new power, the power of the chainsaw demon, merging his body and soul with Pochita's, giving birth to a new being. In that moment, he realizes that if he kills everyone present, he'll be free, he'll no longer have debts, and can finally start living his life. So he proceeds with the massacre, dismembering everyone in the room, spilling gallons and gallons of blood, leaving him alone in the room, depressed, lost in his thoughts, almost without strength. Now, his life belonged to him alone, or at least that's what he thought, because right at that moment, Makima, a leader of the public security demon hunters, appears and notices that Denji smells neither human nor demonic. Makima takes a weakened Denji into her arms and offers him two options: die or become her pet. With his low self-esteem and the miserable life he's led, he believes that being a pet would be the best option. Denji represents simplicity, a person with no other purpose in life than gobble up all kinds of delicacies and enjoy the virtues of the female body, and who is incapable of delving into himself even when trying. The meeting between Makima and Denji, in which she unilaterally decides to adopt him as her new pet, thus giving rise to a sort of birth, metaphorically speaking, of Denji's new life. The problem is that, like an old dog with its problems or quirks, Denji has baggage behind him that he can never get rid of, and that has already left its mark on him. Attracted by the idea of food and a place to live, he begins working for public security. Makima gives him a uniform and assigns him to work with Aki Hayakawa. She makes it clear that she will keep him under close surveillance as a special resource until he dies. And so, Denji escapes misery only to fall into a new form of slavery. This time emotional and psychological, although he doesn't notice. When Makima appears in his life, her being an expert at manipulation is the least of his concerns at that moment. Denji's mind, self-esteem, and self-respect are so shattered that Makima doesn't have to make much of an effort to grasp him. At that moment, the job is already done. But a life of loneliness and social isolation not only undermines Denji's self-esteem, but also has other consequences. It's made clear to us that the members of this association make contracts with very strong demons, offering body parts in exchange. It could be an eye, an arm, or whatever the demon asks for in return, or even a lifetime. Makima makes them live together, and a few days later introduces them to Power, a noisy girl who turns out to be a demon who basically has the same deal as the protagonist: collaborate with the association or die. They are assigned to patrol the city together in search of demons. They chat, and Power gets a bit stifled with Denji. She tells him that when she was free as a demon, she killed everything in her path, but one day she found a cat. It was so weak that she didn't kill it, and decided to take care of it until it made sense to kill it. But little by little, over time, she grew truly attached to it. However, the bat demon appeared, kidnapped the cat, and told him that if he didn't bring a human as a sacrifice, he would never see him again. Power agreed and was caught by Makima just before she could do so. Denji understands that pain. He also lost Pochita, the only being who had ever loved him without anything in return. Clearly, that unites them. Power, seeing that he understands, proposes a deal. If he helps him kill the bat demon, he'll let him touch her breasts. Denji, more motivated than ever, accepts, willing to risk his life for a pair of breasts. Classic anime protagonists are usually driven by values like justice, freedom, or adventure, but Denji isn't one of those. Sexuality is his motivation, and that motivation will be what leads him down the path of growth and the pursuit of maturity, stumbling and taking steps too large for a mental baby. But beyond that, we see how something so simple is worth more than his own life. The point is that he reaches the place where they believe the demon is, but just before he enters, Power hits him with his blood mallet and drags him towards the demon, offering him as a sacrifice. The bat demon tastes Denji's blood and finds it repugnant, but enough to regain his strength, heal his wounds, and continue on his journey. Then, without keeping his promise, the demon swallows the cat and then Power. She automatically surrenders, losing meaning to everything, and lets it devour her. Her bond with that cat was always real. She didn't care about her life any more than that being's. Even knowing that she would most likely be killed for betraying Denji, she didn't care. She was willing to give her life for that cat from the start, and when she saw it devoured, her life lost all meaning. The point is that a weakened Denji watches helplessly as Power disappears inside the demon. This infuriates him, but more than that, it saddens him, not because of the betrayal, but because he understands that pain. Losing someone, letting them be taken from you, and being unable to do anything. He uses the excuse of his breasts to fight with what little strength he has left. He clings to the demon and steals some of its blood to regain his strength without it noticing, and when it does, it's too late. As Denji recovers, like a demon, and a chainsaw man appears. The MC was willing to give his life, and although it may not seem like it, he does it out of empathy for Power. That boy who never received similar treatment now gives everything to save his friend. He dismembers the demon with his chainsaws and saved the girl along with the cat. Sometimes those who have been treated like garbage are the only ones capable of recognizing love and value in others. Denji isn't a traditional hero. He doesn't fight for justice or duty. He fights for small things, for absurd promises, and for a little affection. But behind that apparent superficiality lies something very real, an empathy born of pain. Days later, Power is also assigned to live with Aki and Denji. She keeps her promise to let Denji touch her breast, but he doesn't understand. After doing so, he didn't feel anything. Even though he's shocked, he still doesn't understand how. After achieving something he always wanted, it didn't satisfy him, and in the midst of his thoughts, he tells Makima what happened. She understands everything and explains that the process to reach the goal is the most important thing. She also lets Denji touch her breast, and now everything is different. So much so that Denji wishes his first time would be with her. After that, she tells him about the weapon demon, considered the strongest demon. In this part of the story, we learn that the power of demons varies depending on how much fear humanity has of them. The sea cucumber demon is not the same as the weapon demon. The point is that she explains that they have collected pieces of this demon's flesh which they use to locate the weapon demon, or any demons who have pieces of its flesh, using them as a kind of magnet. And here something very important happens for the MC. Makima tells Denji that if he manages to defeat that demon, she will grant him any wish, knowing that she already has him under her control. She already knows how she can manipulate him. Makima represents an evolved species within the manipulator profile, as she manages to pull the strings without displaying any characteristic traits of this pathology and deceives everyone with an angelic smile. Benji, on the other hand, turns out to be the weakest link in the group of people. Already manipulable, both complement each other perfectly in a sort of unhealthy relationship, offering us a work in which, in an extreme way, manipulation, submission, and power relations are the protagonists. The combination of Benji's absolute lack of self-love and his imbecility with the fact that Denji has the enormous power of the demon of chainsaws turns him into the puppeteer's wet dream with just a glance. Makima knows how to motivate Denji to dance to her tune. Makima knows that offering him food and clothing is more than enough to not only make him forget his doubts, but make him fall in love with her, so that when she tells him, and from that moment on, she knows that she can easily exploit that weakness that lack of self-respect, so that he follows her like a dog even without knowing his name. She gives him the pill just enough, tells him what he wants to hear, and makes sure he obeys her without question. Makima does it so well that her presence alone and look are more than enough to plant in Denji's mind the seed of doubt, and in turn of hope and motivation, becoming a sort of reason for living for Denji, who will continue to obey. And taking all this into account, he sends them to where the weapons demon is supposed to be, since the fragments point to that place. And for that mission, they form a team of 6 people. These would be the ones in charge of investigating that demon. Before entering, Himeno tells them that whoever defeats the demon, she will give a kiss, and Denji does it again. He gives in to the desire for something he's never had. He puts his life in danger again for just a kiss, and as I told you, his life is worthless, or at least that's what he believes. They enter without knowing that this mission will be more mental than physical. From the beginning, something doesn't smell right. They go up to the 8th floor and can't advance further. The floor repeats itself over and over. Time freezes. They are trapped. The demon they face is the demon of eternity, a being that manipulates space, creating an infinite loop, a hell that never ends. Thanks to this, the group panics. Everyone, even Aki, feels despair begin to eat away at their minds, and then the demon proposes a deal. Hand over Denji, let me devour him, and I'll let you go. Kobini doesn't hesitate. She screams, cries, and tries to stab the protagonist, but the others stop her, and with this, the fragmentation of the team begins. Everyone except Aki believes that Denji must die. After all, his life is worthless. He's not even human. And this is where we all tend to go wrong as a species. We always tend to dehumanize what we don't understand. We forget that pain, the desire to live, and love are not exclusive to those we consider normal. The value of a life does not depend on its origin, but on its capacity to feel. And sometimes, all it takes is one person who decides to see what others don't, like Aki, offering a little empathy. After much thought, Denji decides to sacrifice himself. Understanding that his life is beginning to have some value, he begins to have something to protect: Pochita's wishes and his own existence. So much so that if he dies, the others will live. However, he won't go down without a fight. The protagonist activates his chainsaws and throws himself straight into the demon's mouth. He begins to cut and cut. The demon attacks him, but Denji continues, piece after piece. The demon screams in pain. Denji bathes in its blood but can't kill it. His power weakens, but as long as he drinks the demon's blood, he can continue fighting. And so, they spend 3 days fighting until finally, the Eternity Demon surrenders, as the pain was beginning to feel eternal. The loop is broken, the 8th floor returns to normal, and they are free, thanks to Denji's sacrifice. After that, they have a meeting where they get drunk, and Himeno kisses Denji in front of Makima, keeping his promise. But everything goes wrong, as Himeno vomits in the protagonist's mouth, and surprisingly, Denji swallows it. And yes, I know it may seem disgusting, but for Denji, anything that feeds him is food, due to his past life in which he sold his body for a piece of bread. And although this scene is funny, it helps us finally understand how bad things were for the protagonist, identifying with the rats who, to him, were so pathetic that they would do anything to live. After that, Himeno takes Denji home and tries to seduce him, being willing to sleep with him. But for the first time, Denji values himself and decides not to do it with her, as he remembers Makima and his wish for his first time to be with that woman. And so the next day arrives, he talks to Himeno, and they become friends. If we think about the life Denji has led, we can understand how he's able to accept Himeno's friendship and overlook her throwing up in his mouth all for the sake of a few sad sandwiches. She tells him that she is in love with Aki and suggests they help each other. She will help him with Makima, and he should only help her with his friend. Meanwhile, we see Makima heading by train to a meeting with the top public security officials, and out of nowhere she is shot. We cut to Denji again, where we see them meeting, eating peacefully, and we also see the members of the association going about their daily lives, and just like Makima, they are also shot. We return to Denji and see a guy at the table next to him interrupting the protagonist's meal. This turns out to be the grandson of the Yakuza leader, that guy from the beginning of the episode. The guy pulls out a gun out of nowhere and shoots Denji in the head and Himeno in her body, proceeding to turn into the Katana demon. Aki uses her power and stops him, knocking him out, but this woman appears and revives him. She lifts him up like nothing happened. This time, the Katana guy easily defeats Aki, nearly killing him. However, Himeno, seeing himself at a disadvantage due to his injuries, decides to use the power he has a contract with to save him, offering his entire being in exchange, every part of his body, every ounce of his soul, thus disappearing completely. Unfortunately, his sacrifice would be in vain as this woman intervenes again, saving Katanaman, and at that moment, the protagonist reintegrates as Chainsaw Man, fighting with his copyrat, and so we discover that his plan is to kidnap the protagonist protagonist to extract his heart, and that the one behind it all is the weapon demon. The katana-wielding guy cuts the protagonist in two, and we return to the Makima we thought was dead. She got rid of the guys who attacked it on the train and arrives at its destination, indicating that it will take care of the situation from where it is. It requests 30 prisoners sentenced to death and a Shinto shrine that is very high. We will finally see her power. We return to the protagonist again and see how one guy explodes out of nowhere, followed by another and another. It was the power of Makima. It is not made clear how its power works, but through the prisoners, it causes everyone involved to explode by making each prisoner mention the name of the person who will die. Makima saves the protagonist by killing all the NPCs and leaving only Katanaman and this girl alive. After that, we discover that the only survivors of that attack were Denji, Power, and Aki, and we see how the protagonist doesn't care about the lives of those who died. He doesn't feel the same pain as Aki, who upon learning of Himeno's death, bursts into tears. However, the protagonist wants revenge, since while it doesn't hurt him deeply, the one who died was the first person he considered his friend. Thinking about the death of Himeno de Power, Hayakawa, or even Makima doesn't make him feel anything at all, since he concludes that as long as he can maintain his current life, he'll be happy, and that makes him wonder if he's a bad person. Even Denji, a guy with a shoe sole for a brain, is able to realize that something is wrong with these relationships that subjugate him, even if he doesn't fully understand it. And the reality, the harsh and authentic reality, is that we are incapable of feeling pity for the loss of people who don't appreciate, care for, and love us. We aren't programmed to do so. Luckily, Makima takes Power and the MC to train with the most powerful devil hunter. This would be their teacher from now on. And so, time passes while they train until they manage to fight the hunter, since every day he beat them to the point of killing the protagonist more than 20 times. They train for several days until they are all put together for a single mission, where they have to catch the Katana Man and Akane Sawatari, the woman from the previous attack. However, if the mission fails, both Power and Denji would be ruled out, and then the day of the mission arrives. They successfully infiltrate, fight zombies, demons, and humans, and successfully catch Akane. Meanwhile, Denji arrives at the floor where Katanaman is. He wants to kill Denji as revenge for his grandfather's death. He tells Denji to let himself be killed, since his life is worthless, but Denji makes it clear that he's fighting because he wants to protect the life that is now being led by a conceited guy and a loud woman, clearly referring to Aki and Power. He's learning from his new experiences with the world and the people around him. He doesn't care that Power cheated on him or insults him every day. He doesn't care that Himeno vomits in his mouth. He doesn't care that Hayakawa treats him like a piece of trash, because all of this is better than what he had before. Yes, Denji is simple and finds his motivation in such trivial things. After that, the guy turns into Katanaman and Denji into Chainsawman, and they start fighting. They fall into the subway and the guy cuts off the protagonist's arms, but this time, Denji has training. While still in this situation, he has everything under control, and in the middle of an attack, cuts the guy in two with a saw from his leg. The fight ends, and the guy wakes up because he's basically immortal, just like Denji. Denji wants revenge for what he did to Himeno. At that moment, Aki arrives, and the protagonist suggests playing with him by kicking him in the balls, since despite being immortal, that pain can break anyone. On the other hand, after the mission, we see Makima reporting to her leaders. She mentions that this woman unalive herself, and that they confiscated 1 kilogram of the weapon demon's flesh, which, when combined with the pieces they already had, began to move toward the main source. Our environment and our experiences are what lead us down one path or another, and as social beings who seek approval and acceptance, we will always tend to seek improvement in our lives, and in that, we are not so different from Denji. Each and every one of us is just like Denji. We all seek a simple and happy life, and we will fight to defend it. What Denji sees as eating toast, taking a bath, or touching breasts is the same as what we saw as children, eating a candy, or playing with our friends in the park. Simple and plain happiness. Denji is growing up. Being human isn't about shining, it's about falling, breaking, crying, and still trying again. It's about searching for meaning where there isn't any, and when it finds us, it's about continuing to move forward. Perhaps that's the bravest thing we do every day, to continue without certainties, without guarantees, but with the stubborn hope that at some point, life will be worth living.